Hey guys, so this is the last video in Let's Run a Tournament. This one's going to be titled probably Miscellaneous because this is just a lot of random stuff I've thought about that it's kind of important when it comes to having your tournament be successful, not only running well, but being a good series that people want to continuously come back to. A big thing with tournaments is getting people there, and it's not just going to the Facebook page and post about it and talk to like 2 or 3 people and then like people will just show up. It's not that easy. If people go to your tournament and they're expecting 20 to 30 people and they get 8 people, or your bracket is 8 to 12 people, really aren't going to want to come back, and it might not be strictly your fault. Like, it can be a bad weekend, which we'll talk about later, how like there will be times when it's lower and that's okay, but a big thing is doing whatever you can to boost your attendance. And I'm not meaning to say like just throwing a $50 pot bonus out of your pocket to like make your tournament look a little bit better. It's not worth it in that sense, but talk to different regions, work hard on carpools. Numbers really matter because it's probably the easiest way to something you think is covered and it's not, and then it makes your tournament series worse because it's an issue then you can't fix it all day of. It's something that just happens once the bracket starts. You realize what the final number is and you're just like, well, I'm out of luck. Network in your region, make friends in carpools with going to other events, saying like, hey, I'll try to get a carpool coming to your event, like at least other TOs, and if you guys can have a carpool for my next event, that'd be really cool. Like, when I first started TOing in my city, I helped set up one scene about an hour away, and then I definitely helped with tournament brackets in 2 or 3 other scenes, being like, hey, yeah, I'm a TO, I know what's going on, let me help you out. If I'm helping someone start up a tournament and they're just like telling all their friends, it's gonna be like, oh, it's not just gonna be the regular like 6 of us that all play together. Like, we're having a couple people come from this city and like 2 or 3 from here, so people you never get to play, maybe matchups people don't get to play a lot, and that'll incentivize it. Like, getting one strong player from a little out of your region or city can go a long way. And if you can help other people with that, they will be more than glad to help you, because other TOs realize like how big this is. And when you're all good friends and can help each other out, everyone wins. Something that TOs really won't talk to many people about, but is a thing, is you're gonna have to put up with people. There are gonna be people who either like see you as like the head of a scene if you are, or are chilling around the TO desk. And this is usually like lower level players, or just some people that you're going to have to interact with because they have to report at least 2 matches to you, if not more. Probably going to try to start a conversation too at the TO desk if no one's around, and you got to deal with it. This is something I want to talk about because I'm not saying like, oh, the scene's so insufferable, you're going to like hate tons of people, but there are going to be people that you have to deal with, and if you're not ready to put up with it, you can make your tournament look really bad by telling someone to F off, in a sense, if they're coming up and you don't handle it right. Like, if someone comes up and they're like just trying to chill and have a chat and it's not someone I generally like and I'm running a tournament, I can't be like, dude, get out of here, this is not the time. But I'm gonna be like, hey, I gotta run the tournament, we can talk later some other time. A big part of being a TO is being able to put up with not just like the people you love like running the tournaments for, but also the people you're like, oh, you know, I wouldn't be upset if you don't show up, because there will be the couple of people. And I'm not saying this is like, man, I hate my scene. Like 99.9% of my scene, great. Just like 1 or 2 bad apples. It's just like, oh, this, you got to handle yourself. And it's kind of like as if you were in customer service. You can't blow up at like 1 or 2 people who like either get mad at you. Like if someone gets mad at how like a tournament played out, like, oh my God, I'm playing this person again. And it's either the fact of like seating couldn't change, or they didn't tell you that they had been playing them in tons of matchups across the state. You just got to deal with it. Fix whatever the issue, or tell them is, I can't fix it, that was something that couldn't be changed, and move on. Don't get tilted. It's kind of like if you get tilted in a match after someone, like if Rosalina kills you at 20 or Bayo kills you at 30, if you get tilted, everything goes down from there. Like, entire tournament experience for everyone will. Don't piss people off. This kind of goes hand in hand with the other one, but it's so easy to not be friends with someone, and not in the sense of like, oh, you know, I just never talk to him, I guess we're not really friends, but the sense of like, man, I really don't like him when I've interacted with him. He's been a jerk to me, and they don't want to go to tournaments. They're not running a carpool anymore. They're spreading that word of mouth in their city like, oh, I don't think he's a really cool person. Because when I started up TOing, I worked, like, got my numbers up a decent amount higher. Like, I run usually the most popular monthly in the state, and I've had other people who were TOs being like, telling people, oh, yeah, like, not a great person, doesn't run good tournaments. And they're like, well, I don't have no reason to not believe you. You're part of my scene. Why would I not take their word for it? Then they met me and it's like, oh, you know, he's not that bad. And I'm not trying to say this isn't like a sense of gloating or being like, oh, I have a great tournament series. Being nice with people, just generally, it's not that hard. And it's really important when it comes to TOing, because you need not only the good image of he runs tournaments well, but I want to go to a tournament run by whoever, because that actually helps a lot when you have a really good image as a TO. And be honest with everything, how payouts are going to be beforehand, if there's a venue fee, if you're taking any of it. I believe people should have the right to know. I think TOs should be getting a cut of it a lot more often than they are, but that doesn't mean you should be like, yeah, venue is like $5 when it was like normally $3, and they're like, why is that? And you're just like, oh, they increased the venue, like low numbers or something, even though like it might not be true and you're just pocketing money. Be honest about that. Be honest if people like are really questioning your like top seating. I know in another video I talked about like hiding seating for lower levels, but if people are like, why did you seed like this? Tell them why you did, and be okay to admit that you're wrong. Like, I've definitely had bias seating, but I always try to have someone someone look over them so that they can help me in the scenario. But be honest, everything. Like, talk about, yes, I've been working to address this issue. No, I'm going to get to it. This is how many people I'm expecting. Because you don't want to be like, yeah, I'm expecting like 60 people. You're telling like an out-of-stater or someone who's going to have to come really far, and then there's like 20 people and they're like, you wasted my time. You lied to me. And don't get me wrong, you could say that and then be completely wrong. Like, I've had tournaments where I had like, I think 31 singles entrants when I hadn't had under 60 in probably 3 or 4 months, and it happened, and that's okay. There's some calls you're going to make as a TO that don't make sense to players, and I have a pretty good example of this. I went to a tournament called TGC 6, which was a Texas like monthly, or it was like bi-monthly or regional, that I was entered in doubles, and this was a huge tournament. This tournament had a lot of problems, but this wasn't one of them. We were playing doubles, won our first set, lost our second. After we reported our second match, we immediately went to eat. We probably were outside for maybe 10 minutes. And to put this in retrospect, there were over 128 teams. And there was a ton of losers matches to go. So we were like, if we go run and grab food, there is no way we get called again. 110%. So we come back in, we're waiting like 15 minutes. We don't get called again. I go up to the TO desk and I'm like, hey, where have we been called? And he's like, you guys got DQ'd. And I'm like, what do you mean? We've been in here since our match call. And he's like, I called you guys and you didn't show up. And I was like, we went eat for 7 to 10 minutes tops. How did we get called when there were so many other losers matches? And he's like, it was another match for me to call that was ready to go, and you guys weren't here. I'm sorry. And at the time, I was like, oh, why can't you just like redo it? The next match hasn't played. Just call us to fight them anyway. Like, I didn't get it. I was like, you didn't really give us that much time. But on his end, he's got a huge tournament to run. He had matches open to call. He had setups to call them on. And we didn't show up in the allotted time period because he probably called us like a couple minutes after we went outside, and then after 5 minutes they were like they didn't show up, so we got DQ'd. And it didn't make sense to me, but now I understand completely. If I was in his position and people didn't show up and they didn't tell me that they weren't going to be there, that they deserve it. Because had I told him, hey, do we have time to go eat for like 5 or 10 minutes, and he's like, yeah, like I won't call you. Yeah, in like 15 minutes he's not going to remember that we talked about that because he's got a lot more going on, but he'll remember for long enough that he won't call us. And if he does call us and I go and address that issue later, he's going to be like, you know what, I did tell you I was going to wait for you and I didn't, I'll fix it. So that whole overarching story is to be like, there are decisions that are going to make players angry and they're not going to get it, but that doesn't mean you're wrong. And not to say that like if someone's wrong with your decision, that just means you're right, because that's also not true at all. TOs aren't infallible. Your one call doesn't mean it's 100% right, but understand you'll make people upset with what you do. Like I called 2 matches and they ended up swapping. So like player A and B and C and D were supposed to fight, and like A and C and B and D fought. And one dude was mad after he won the match. He's like, why can't you just change the names and continue bracket? And I was like, look, I can't because of regional conflict. Like I can't do it. And he was like, well, that's just not fair. Like I have to play another match. And he doesn't understand that the bigger scope of things, I can't change it, and he shouldn't have played that match anyway. I just had to be like, look, dude, sorry, go play this next match, and leave it at that. And that's okay. I know I harped on that, but it's important to know that people will get upset sometimes, and it's okay. It's not the end of the world if someone has one situation where like there's a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth, when in reality you can explain it and show that, no, this was the right way to handle it. But do what's best for everybody. The scenario, what I was talking about at TGC 6, is that was to make sure that the entire tournament kept running smoothly. Like someone didn't show up, you got to hand out the DQ and you got to keep moving forward. Make sure that like the entire tournament isn't going to run bad because you're trying to hold up for 1 or 2 people that are like, oh, they might be my friends, or oh, they're about to be back, when like it will be a problem if they don't show up. Make the calls and make the tournament run well. And also, because you have lower attendance than normal doesn't mean your tournaments failing. Like I said, I had that one tournament where I had 31 entrants instead of the normal 50 to 60. And that problem was there was expected really bad weather that day. A lot of the people who generally could carpool couldn't. And it was also just like a bad weekend where everyone was out of town. And like that's all it was. My next tournament, I had like my second biggest tournament with like 86 entrants. Another like high level example is CEO Dreamland. It was on Easter Sunday, and the attendance was super low for what they expected, and they were like negative $20,000. And it was nothing wrong because Jabali, the TO for all the CEO events, all of his events run really well. They run on time. They're generally very, very few problems, but it had nothing to do with him. It was just that weekend, and he couldn't do anything about that. Like, if you wanted to run that event, it had to be there. Just like my monthly, that was on the weekend with bad weather. That was the weekend that we usually had, like, the last weekend in the month, and that's okay. I don't need to get upset or be like, oh, I don't want to host stuff anymore. Now, like, if you're losing money, then you should consider, like, oh, I need to be a lot more careful about stuff to make sure that that doesn't happen. But outside of that, know that it's not the end of the world. It's going to be thankless a lot of the time. People will... As you get like better and better at it, a couple people will start to tell you more. It took probably a year and a half, like up until this point from when I started TOing, that people will constantly, after a tournament, I'll at least have one person tell me really good tournament as always or something. Whereas for like a year straight, people generally didn't say like, oh, that was a good tournament. Like, thanks for running it. And that's okay. I'm not going into tournaments expecting people to do that. I'm running these tournaments because I enjoy running them. I enjoy like having a tournament scene in my own city, and a couple other things, but you have to be okay with it. You can't be salty running a big tournament, working your butt off, and then no one is like, you know, you did a really good job. Like, you handled everything today, or you got through this issue. Like, it was, I'm glad you're running these events. I had a lot of fun. You just got to be okay with it because it's a thankless and mostly payless job too, unless you're either at a higher level or depending on where you're running your events with who, like if you have a deal worked out. And that's really like the last point I want to leave on TOs is, it's something that you have to get enjoyment out of doing. You can't get it as an enjoyment from others. Like, I like, at the end of the day, being like, man, I ran this bracket really fast, or it was cool to see all the people that were brought here because I was running this tournament, or something that comes from within you or like the tournament itself and not other people. Because I had one tournament that it was a nightmare to run. It was like my biggest tournament at the time, or still is my biggest, with like 87 singles entrants and I don't know, like 26 or 27 teams. And it was really hard. I was exhausted at the end of the day. And I was just like, why am I doing this sort of thing? And someone came up and was like, Lance, this was like the best tournament I've ever been to. And I was like that right there, like that one comment being the only comment I had gotten in like 6 months about my tournaments being ran, like just made it so much better. Because I was already like, I would have been happy the next day looking at the brackets and seeing everyone happy with like the upsets they were able to accomplish or something. But when it does happen, it's so worth it. Like everything TOing, if it's what you want to do, like being the leader running stuff, totally 100% worth it if you can do it. And I did talk a lot about a lot of stuff in these videos, and it might seem a little overwhelming, but trust me, it's not the hardest thing in the world to do. What these videos kind of were doing were setting you up, and then if you have mistakes or are unsure of where to go, if you watch all of these, this should cover almost everything besides very specific scenarios. And you can do it, and you can set up your own scene. It's not the hardest thing. All you have to do is get people to want to go, run it well every time. And I don't mean like you have a perfect tournament every time, because that's not what I'm saying at all. But run a decent tournament every time, and people will keep coming back. And then your scene can flourish from your monthlies being like 30-ish people to on average 60 like mine are now. And it's a great feeling. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling about me enjoying being a TO. Thank you guys for watching this series. I know that it came out a little bit delayed, and it's not also like the most digestible content. It's not like, oh, everyone wants to get better looking at Smash videos. Not everyone is a TO. Very few people in the grand scheme of things are TOs, but I hope it helped at least a couple of you out. Make sure to remember, share it, like, subscribe, yada yada. Next video is going to be doubles, probably focusing on support, and I'll see you on the next one.